You know, I'm sick of proving myself. Need some direction to the top. I know where, but not when. I want the pain to stop, because the hunger never will. God's breath still fresh in my ear, but I fear no man. Demand respect, keep your distance. I'm speaking to everything but money. Live for change. I give all I have. Laugh at jokes funny. I could smile, but inside I can't take much more. All the talent in the world, all the drama in the world. So I took it to the streets. They hated the cracker, but loved the flow. So respected me as a rapper, an entrepreneur, something they all admired. Then I introduced the raw and they all retired. Flow to dust, switch up. Versatility's a gift. Dodging biz since a kid. All I did was riff, writing poetry. So hopefully I'd stay out of trouble. But at this rate, I'm going to be in the cage before I bubble. And that was my mentality. That was a mimic written lyric I pretended was a freestyle in the same parking lot. Random phone booth where I was robbed by a gang of teenagers in 2007. This time, I was knocked on my back, knife in my throat, in my underwear. 10 years later, I signed a record deal, and I was on a new personal and professional high. I took a company from 0 to 100, hit the Inc. list as the number 13 fastest growing company in New York, number 24 in global marketing and advertising. I won the CEO's Corporate Cultural Award alongside Russell Simmons and Ariana Huffington. And I was creating amazing content. I was working with celebrities, closing deals, as you mentioned, with Katy Perry and Samsung and Miley Cyrus and Rihanna, and, just producing major music festivals, 10 live 2-hour broadcasts for CBS, and just working with some of my favorite people on the planet. Personally, I was traveling the world. I fell in love. I moved into a nice 2-bed, 2-bath, balcony, fireplace, pool, tennis courts, all that. But, what I learned is that a comfortable environment does not guarantee a peaceful mind. See, I was thriving professionally, but I was having problems. I was foggy. I was easily irritable. I was always complaining and comparing and criticizing. And I certainly wasn't in what I've now come to know as alignment. And this is not the first time we've heard this, right? I mean, Jim Carrey famously said that he wishes everyone could get rich and famous and live their wildest dreams so that they could see that it's not the answer. And Dr. Sonia Lubomirsky wrote 2 great books. One is called The How of Happiness, and one is called The Myth of Happiness, And in both books, she ascribes only 10% of our happiness to life's circumstances, like marital status and education and wealth, things that we typically chase. In my underwear again, but this time I'm looking for solutions. See, this internal stress, I felt it was starting to manifest itself into my body. And I felt like this trapped energy was creating dis-ease. And wouldn't you know it, a few months later, I was diagnosed with an autoimmune disease and allergies to wheat, flour, barley, malt, emulsifiers, thickeners, and a lot of things found in processed foods. Spending most of my childhood in North Jersey and attending BCA means that I was raised pretty much bagels for breakfast and pizza for most other meals throughout the day. But unfortunately, I'm at a point now where, a slice of pizza would probably have me curled up on the bathroom floor in a fetal position, saying prayers in my head because I don't have enough energy to say it out loud. And stress manifested itself other ways in my life too. But thank goodness I had enough self-awareness to feel it coming, and enough resources through family and friends and my community and my teachers and my support system to continue to search for solutions. So here I am again, in my underwear, on my laptop, trying to find solutions for how I'm feeling, and had a pretty good relationship with my doctor. So, of course, you don't feel good. That's one of the first places you turn. So my doctor referred me to a behavioral health clinic in Princeton, New Jersey. And lo and behold, I have my first clue. I was diagnosed with bipolar disorder, general anxiety disorder, PTSD, and a few other things classified under the heading of depression. And I can remember this day. I mean, I was thrilled. And my doctor looked at me like I had 2 heads and asking, why I would be so happy about such a difficult diagnosis. But to me, this was it. I thought, hey, finally some medical terminology to what I'm experiencing. Now let's figure out the treatment, right? On the path to healing. Let's begin. Well, not so fast. They put me on a bunch of different medications. Most of them made me very sleepy and lethargic. Some made me very bloated and fat, and most gave me terrible dreams and this feeling of just sluggishness. But my spirit was still alive. And so whatever ambition I could muster up that morning, I'm back in my underwear on the laptop, continuing to search for a sustainable solution. And one of my friends who I'd been writing songs with at the time suggested that I speak to his aunt, who was a natural channeler in Israel. And at this point, what do I have to lose, right? I mean, I've tried Eastern herbs and rituals. I've tried Western medicines. And so I figured, why not? And boy, am I glad that I did that, because this was my first inclination of hope. That this was my first introduction to the journey of the soul. And so the ocean of knowledge reads that we're essentially this ball of stardust riding in this meat-covered skeleton, floating on this rock called Earth through space. And while this was a foreign idea to me, it resonated. And so I wanted to explore this idea further. I wanted to see it from every angle. I wanted to submerge myself into this idea. I wanted, for this idea, what every human being wants for any idea. I wanted it to manifest itself in my life. I wanted to see it play an active role. And so, I read that resilience is classically defined as our ability to anticipate, absorb, adapt, and learn from shocks and stresses. Well, life's shocks and stresses certainly wore me down. I didn't want to make music. I didn't want to tour. I didn't consider myself worthy of the satisfaction of applause. Most days, I honestly didn't even want to get out of bed. And so this discovery of purpose really changed my life. And so I thought to myself, maybe this definition of resilience is incorrect. Maybe it's not about our ability to adapt to the negative things bound to happen in our life. Maybe it's about trusting ourselves enough to know that we have everything that we need inside of us, that if we're open to it, that we're connected to this infinite source of knowledge and wisdom. And I'm not talking about your Wi-Fi connection to Google. See, this shift in perception has solved so many misfirings in my brain. Learning more about the real reason I'm here, knowing about that we're all kind of extensions of the same source. And this shift in perception, I really have credited to, helping me cement my steadfast beliefs in standing against sexism and racism and discrimination throughout my career in a very difficult and competitive industry. I've been taught that we all have this intuitive relationship to the world around us, and that we're all connected in some way, and that you get what you ask for. And we've all heard these cliches, right? I mean, you are what you eat, you're a product of your environment, the law of attraction, what you think you become. But while we've heard this before, how do we make it practical, right? So I struggled at first with the awareness of my thoughts. I had to figure out how to unpack the triggers for why certain thoughts would pop up into my brain, where they came from. And through this process, I realized something very important. See, as part of our job here, through the many roles and masks that we play and costumes that we wear, student, teacher, sister, brother, mother, father, coach, friend, part of this is to anticipate potential outcomes, right? Expect the best, but plan for the worst. Well, if I'm preparing for things that could potentially go wrong, and if I'm also practicing manifesting my thoughts into reality, then how could I possibly anticipate something potentially negative without magnetizing it into existence? See, this was essentially the conundrum that I was faced with. And so I spent essentially the last decade exploring this idea. And so I wanted to share with you guys today what I picked up along my travels. And one of them is what I consider to be the best technique that I found to help manage your thoughts. So the ocean of knowledge reads that we are these tiny points of light located right behind the eyes in the center of the forehead, and that our purpose here is to experience and express the innate qualities of our soul. And that's, peace, power, purity, love, wisdom, joy, happiness. But due to our interactions in this world of the five senses here, and the settling of our karmic accounts, we're subject to these five vices. And the vices have a tendency to dim our light or block our shine. And the light, the acronym is ALGE. It's the same thing that covers up the ocean floor, right? Anger, lust, greed, attachment, and ego. Now, we've been granted 8 spiritual powers to combat these five vices, which I'll dig into in a future talk. But, what I want to really emphasize is that, what I've learned here is that, I've never really had any issues in dealing with things outside of myself. I studied in school. I practiced throughout my entire career managing people, managing stress and situations and circumstances. But I never had the tools to manage what was in here, to manage my own thoughts. And see, this is where the trouble was brewing. So I'd like to introduce you today to what I consider to be called the scale of thought. So we have 70,000 thoughts per day, 48.6 thoughts per minute. You'll have over 730 thoughts just during my talk alone today. Well, my thoughts were out of control, and I felt like a victim of them instead of a co-creator. So essentially we have these 5 buckets of thoughts, and it can be represented by this diagonal line, if you can see this, right? So down here we have the negative thoughts. Negative thoughts are rooted in those 5 vices that I mentioned: anger, lust, greed, attachment, ego. Thoughts that are rooted there are negative. Then a step above the negative thoughts, we have wasteful thoughts. And wasteful thoughts are your typical should've, would've, could've. Neutral thoughts in the center. Neutral thoughts are essential, but they're not positive or negative. You know, I'm wearing a burgundy shirt. It's 5:57 p.m. Did I leave the oven on? Sure, are neutral and mundane thoughts. Then we have positive and divine, and that's really where we want our thoughts to live. So each thought we have can be represented by some point along this diagonal line. Let's walk through an example. So let's say we're walking down Hackensack Avenue, we're heading back from lunch, we're eating a sandwich, and you see this massive dog just foaming at the mouth. A negative thought might be, how irresponsible. You know, I hope somebody locks this dog up in a kennel. Escalating that up one step to a wasteful thought. Maybe that would be, I should have crossed the street a block ago and I wouldn't have had to deal with this, right? You're spending energy on this thought, something that you can't control now, you're already here, wasteful thought. A neutral thought might be, this dog looks hungry. A positive thought, I hope someone gives this dog a good home with love as you kind of tiptoe around the dog. And a divine thought might be, as you lean in and you give the dog the rest of your sandwich, potentially dangerous as well. But you kind of get the idea. And so our goal here is to become aware of the thought that we have, pin it down along the scale, and then rephrase our thought to escalate it up the scale. See, our brains learn through repetition and rehearsal. And while it takes a bit of practice in the beginning, eventually your mind will begin to produce positive thoughts on its own. So without further ado, here are my top 5 tips for an entrepreneur's mental health. Number 1, do what you love. Life is too short not to do what you love. All the time. Do it. Number 2, listen to your body. Your body knows what's good for you, and most importantly, what's not good for you. All you have to do is listen. Number 3, drink half your body weight in ounces of quality water each and every day. We are mostly water, and unless you're replenishing those cells, you're going to have mental and physical deprivation. Number 4, get real rest. Real rest. I'm not talking about tossing and turning while on your cell phone. Get real rest. Important problems are solved while you sleep. Healing is happening while you sleep, whether you know it or not. It is. And number 5, don't overthink it. Rely on your gut. It is truly your intelligence. So my goal for sharing these tips with you is not necessarily just to help us get through the day. And it's not just to create more positive thoughts in the community, but for us all to create for ourselves a happier and more meaningful existence, no matter how much of our lives we spend in our underwear.